All right, so we're going to dive into business structure today. And we're not going to go deep into the tools, but we're going to talk about every single kind of component of a business and kind of unravel what's kind of needed in each one. I think this is where a lot of people either get overwhelmed, they get stuck, and honestly, they either don't set it up right and it just all piles on top. And that's where a lot of problems start to happen. So we're going to dive into this with the mindset of systems at the baseline, the foundation. So whether you're running a business right now, whether you're thinking about one, whether you're just kind of wondering, hey, do I want to try it? Let's start here. So erase everything you've kind of known about, business structures and that kind of thing. And let's just kind of start from square one. So right now, where does your business live, right? Is it in your head? Is it in an inbox? Is it on a folder somewhere? Is your downloads folder, your desktop, a complete mess? For some, it might be. Never has been for me, but it's kind of one of those things where with a media background, I've always had to keep folders and folders and folders. And yes, I've accidentally deleted hard drives. I've lost footage. I've made those mistakes too. But what's prevailed through the whole thing is the sense of organization of where kind of the original source of data comes from. And I guess that's where this conversation is actually kind of opening up a little bit more. Basically, when you start to think about where the world's going, whether that be technology enabled, scaling being infinitely easier as a company sometimes, with this technology, systems are going to be kind of the most important thing to scale. So let's just play out a scenario here where let's assume AI runs everything, right? It's a good one to play out because one way or another, it's actually going to be beneficial for everybody, whether it's going to be run by an AI or run by a person. The thought process should actually kind of be the same. So I like to think about you're looking at each part of your business or each component of it in a way that you can teach it, instruct it. Somebody can literally go step by step with no expertise and kind of get it done. It's easier said than done to actually kind of compartmentalize and capture all the thoughts you have, the unique approach you have, your life experience, your ideas, everything into this kind of almost like a SOP or directions of how to run a business. But that is what is going to be most valuable, because one of the big things that I think founders miss is, and I used to believe this for a long time, was that, if you share your knowledge, your expertise, the kind of black box that's in your brain, right? That once that's out there, well, either A, somebody's going to steal it, B, you're not valuable anymore, or C, it might work, but you just don't feel it's just right or perfect. And the reality is, 99% of people don't act on the startup idea that they could have heard, because when you really get into the weeds with it, it's hard. It's really hard. And if you really want to succeed at it, it's going to take that extra grit to kind of push through. And that's where a lot of those I call them tourist entrepreneurs, kind of come in and they try something, they'll, succeed or fail, and succeed a little bit or fail, pretty largely. And they'll just be like, oh, that wasn't for me, and move on to the next thing. But the people that are really going at it thoughtfully, the mindset is, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, what happens? Does the business die? Can it operate? How does it function? And these are kind of the thoughts actually weirdly that you want to have at the beginning, because it's much, much, much easier to add things on top of a solid foundation than to build a house on a crumbly foundation and have to completely redo it and take everything down and kind of almost rebuild. A lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted money. Not worth it. So in this case, what would it look like if your business had an actual brain to it, like a central hub, one place where everything you know actually lives. And so I want you to start thinking about business as almost like the operations of a business, almost in certain categories. So you're going to have your data side. So I'll use AI as a reference on this because I think it actually really helps. So if you go to AI and you just ask a question, right, it's going to give you an answer. Is it the right answer? Is it the most accurate answer? Is it the curated to you? Sure, you could have a good prompt in there, but most likely it's not going to be like spot on, right? Well, what if you could actually interact with it off of your own data set? And then it can give you the answer based on your data. That's actually fundamentally awesome. And the coolest part is it would be the same whether a human's interacting with it or an AI. So you take a human working on the business, right? Or in the business. They're going to need to kind of look up information. They're going to need to vet to see if something's correct. Where do they go to do that? Is it on a folder in a Google Drive somewhere that's unlabeled? Is it running around in Dropbox? Is it in an email? Is it, on your computer? Is it in a Google Doc? Is it in a Microsoft Word doc? I mean, people just have all of these things everywhere. They can have it on Slack. Knowledge should be centralized. Like, going back to a physical reference, you need a knowledge library. I mean, that was the idea of libraries, was that it was a place where knowledge was kept and people could access the knowledge to then go out into the world and do what they do. What's so interesting is we've kind of come to this roundabout moment where we kind of need that library again. Like, there's too much information spinning around, going around us at all times. We actually need that centralized library to be like, no, go to this aisle and pull this book and read this information. That's kind of actually what you kind of need to operate, especially as a business. And so I want you to think about, like, where's that data going to live? And it could live in, Google Drive. It could live in Proton Drive. It could live in Dropbox. It could live in Notion. But choose one place that's going to be your central place where you put all your knowledge. I would actually recommend you tie that with whoever your email company that you're going to go with is. Personally, I'm a big fan of Proton Mail. I've been using them for a long time, and it's not just the privacy thing. Like that, yeah, it's probably a huge part of it. But I actually think the product's really awesome. It came out of the same lab that invented the internet. So it's just very thoughtfully crafted software that's really, really well done. Now, the downside to the Proton whole thing is that it doesn't necessarily connect with all of the tools and everything. So you may want to be going the Google route. I think that one might actually be better, the Google route, if you were to kind of think about this as an interconnected system. But realistically, you want your data, your source of knowledge, to be in one central location. Make that choice and stick to it. Don't change, don't move stuff around, just stick to it. And from there, you're also going to need kind of that accounting layer. So now it's kind of interesting. You're having a lot of development of companies that are software and banks at the same time. And so there's a couple different outlets that are literally a business bank, and they will kind of keep your bookkeeping stuff all together. Because the way that bookkeeping software generally has worked is that you connect your bank to it, pulls all your transactions in, you have to categorize your transactions, saying like this was an expense for travel, this was income for design, whatever that is. You categorize it all, and that's how you kind of report your books at the end of the year. Well, a lot of this banking software is kind of like, well, why not just take that tool and put it inside the banking side? And so they just started to do that. So that's another silo that you're going to want, is the finance silo. So you're going to have the finance, kind of call it knowledge, operations, SOP, like that kind of section. And then you're going to have your product / execution side of the business. Each one is kind of siloed on its own. They'll kind of interconnect, of course, because all of them eventually tie together. But they should kind of be in your mind as different processes. So as you go into finance, you're going to be going into that system, and it's here's where all of our files are. Here's where everything's kept here. knowledge base. Now we go over here, and that's where everybody accesses files. Now we go over here, and this is where we can execute on the project. And then you need a communication layer. The world pretty much runs off of Slack. Slack's great. It's incredible. It's versatile. It's scalable. It's not super expensive. You can even do the free one, basically. You have stuff like that. You have asynchronous communication with some of like the Todoist side. They have their own version of a chat application. But basically like some place to communicate. I was told early on, specifically on the finance side, which was very important. Let me backtrack slightly. Set up a business bank account the moment you register your business. That's like number one. So this goes in line with the recommendation that I got very early in my career. Separate the business and your personal life, finance, everything. Keep it separate. And I can't stress that enough. Keep it separate because it should be. So don't use your personal card to buy business things, and do not do the business card to buy personal things. If you buy personal things for your business, you're just missing out on a tax write-off. If you buy personal things on a business, that's like bad. So don't do that. But always keep them separate. So when you first register a business, whether that's through LegalZoom or your own accountant, whatever, you register your business as an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, whatever that is. We can get into that a little bit later. But once you register that, you want to get yourself a separate bank account. And so choose a bank that you want to work with. There are business banks. There are, these other institutions that are specific to like kind of the business and the software side that also offer stuff. Just go with one that you trust. I mean, I'm not going to say they're all the same, but kind of similar. So I've used a lot of them over the years, a lot of the major banks. I've used some of the side ones too. They all kind of do the same thing, if you will. Like they manage money and they make sure the numbers are the numbers. But you'll make that decision and then you're going to set up kind of the accounting system for the company. So you're going to make sure that like, okay, here's the business bucket. We have the business finance, we have the business entity and the operations set up. And that's where you then store, your email, your domains, all of your stuff is all just in one hub. And keep those documents too, because you actually end up needing those documents quite a bit. I can't tell you how many times I've needed to know my EIN number to put into a W-9 or, just random documents that you'll just kind of need. It's best to just have those in one place where you can always access them. And it's kind of in this business bucket. So on the team communication side, I think it depends on the company that you're running or the pursuit that you want to have. So let's just say it's one person. You probably don't need a communication layer. Now, you're definitely going to want the same exact setup for all the other things. Like this whole setup of having kind of a finance bucket, an ops bucket, and then kind of a product bucket. Those are going to be the same for any business, and those should not change. The nature and of how they work and maybe how robust and complex they are, that will be dependent upon the business, how many people are there, how many different things you're doing. I mean, that's where it starts to kind of bolt on. But the basis is you just have your ops, your finance, and your product side. So on the communication side, I highly don't recommend texting and all of that. You totally can if it's like quick, and like urgent. So generally like I'll message people if it's kind of urgent, you're just reaching out to somebody. It's kind of the way most people communicate now anyway. I have a lot of people who just message me about things rather than some official channel of like an email or anything like that. So that part's fine. But the reason why I recommend putting it inside some sort of something, whether it be a, Telegram or a Slack or one of the other ones, it's because of that data. If you're like, what was that message we sent? Like, what was it, like a year ago? Well, you can search that. It's a lot harder to go find that in your messaging app. And so Part of it is for a little bit of a knowledge base and a historical context around things. And the other is to also keep that brain separation between personal and business, because that's very important. And then the other thing is trying to think about what are your normal tasks that you're going to really have to do for a business, and whatever that may be. So generally, most people have to do a few normal things: manage some sort of calendar, send email, or outreach to some extent, sales-ish kind of thing, and then operate the business itself and work on the product. How many of those processes are you doing without thinking about them? And that's the really interesting thing. So I started kind of keeping track of the things that I do. And I wouldn't do this on a long scale, only because you end up kind of micromanaging yourself, which is not good. But if you need perspective around where your kind of time is being spent, where your effort is, but also the most important things that you do, keep track of those. So if your morning routine is you're checking your emails and then you're going into your projects, and in the morning you're a little bit more creative, in the afternoon you like to do meetings, like take note of that, but also take note of how you do those things. And the reason why I say that is that goes back to that knowledge base of teaching somebody if you can't be running the business for any number of reasons. What if you want to go on a vacation? Like that's a real thing. If your business is going and it inherently relies on you, it's really hard to get away from it, and it's not a good idea, to be honest. Like you don't want to be you don't want to feel trapped in your business. You want to be able to feel like it's this separate thing that is growing, and you're just kind of the shepherd of the idea, and you're trying to bring things around it. And it can kind of survive on its own if you kind of walk away for just a little bit. Maybe it's a trip. Maybe you do have some sort of emergency that you have to step away. You don't want your business to suffer, but most importantly, you don't want to have that stress to run with you. Like it's the worst is when you have a lot of stress, you're in a situation where you can't do anything about it, and then it just gets worse. So I think documenting the things that you do, and again, do this in the knowledge base, wherever that may be. Could be Google Docs, could be Notion, could be any one of those. Document those things there. So that way you just have a running tally of all the things that you do. Because if you were to look at value of companies, and I don't mean this in terms of, the money and the, public shares and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean it in that way. I just mean what makes a valuable business is one that can continue to run for generations. Those 100-year-old businesses, those 120-year-old businesses that grandparents ran and then passed on to kids, like that kind of stuff. Those businesses are run because the knowledge of how to do it is passed on from, in family businesses, generation to generation, but non-family businesses, kind of each business generation to the next. As senior leadership moves out, they pass it to the next, kind of generation to take over and run the company. And that process, the how of doing it, that's the value of the company. So if you were to take like a hardware supply store as an example, I can get a hammer at 5 different places. Why do I go to that one? Well, it's how they do it. It's why they do it. It's maybe they have a great conversation with somebody in there. Maybe their customer service is great. Maybe the return policy is amazing. That's a bit of a how function. That's the uniqueness of it. And the more you can document that is, in business terms, intellectual property, IP, to the company. But in your terms, it's a buttoned up package that, one day you can pass that business on. Because let's be real, one of the reasons why you build a business at the end of the day is to impact an entire, community, whether it's your local community, broader community, world, whatever that is. You want to have some sort of impact, legacy. There is a money tied to it from the standpoint of you want to be able to live the life you want to live off of it and be able to make a living. So based on that, what do you do at the end of that run? When you're getting older and you're like, all right, I just can't do this anymore, whether it be physically, mentally, whatever. Maybe it's time to move on. Well, you got a couple options. One, you can close the business. Two, you can sell the business. Three, you can kind of stay in the business-ish and hire people around you, which isn't a good one. And then the last one is you can go big and try and go public, which is also not great either. For a host of different reasons. It also depends on the business model. But with all those things considered, there's an end state to this process. And the end state in this case is you want to be able to hand a functioning business over. You don't want to hand a business that says, hey, here are the keys. Thanks for the sale. Good luck. And it's just a dumpster fire on the inside like that. And most companies, if they're acquiring another company, they're going to do their due diligence anyway. But for everything that's more disorganized, and this could be from the very beginning, that foundation, less that's going to be valued at the end of the day. And so keeping this kind of organization, allowing people to kind of come in almost really easy and to kind of run the business, that's what you want. I mean, if you think about this in a sandwich, let's take a sandwich chain. So Subway, right? They got to do the same process. How do you make a sandwich? Well, how you make a sandwich, but how Subway makes a sandwich has got to be consistent. So they have those standard protocols through the whole thing, and this is exactly how they do it. Are there some deviations? Maybe, but there's a standard no matter what, and that's the experience that the customer gets. That same thought process goes into anything that you design, create, whether it be a luxury good or a daily good or a service or anything like that. It's all kind of the same thing. You want to be able to standardize the process as much as possible. And so I have a process for how I film, how I offload footage, how I make the folders, how I import into the editor, how I even edit is my own process, which is, people may have something similar, but quite like mine. I don't know. And so document these things that you do. And then you not only have your little playbook, but let's just play this out that maybe your onboard training one day is actually an AI person doing the knowledge-based training, and then you're doing the hands-on training with the person on the human side of the business. But it's kind of like going to school and just like researching the knowledge back where you have to just watch videos and all that stuff. Maybe that interaction comes with an AI. Well, your training set is based on how you do things. So there you go. It's already buttoned up and ready to go. Now it just saved you time. And so whether you're a one-person business who in 3 years you have, 10, 12 people, well, when you get to that point, you've already prepped for it. You're already going through a lot of chaos of your business growing. You don't have to stack on training on top of that. And so if you get ahead of it early and you kind of go, this is how I do what we do. This is our step for this. This is our process. You're going to be in a really good spot. So think through process, think through the solid foundations of finance, operations, and we'll call it product, and just get those really solid. And do some research. Like do some research on a few brands. Like I generally test everything. Most all softwares have some sort of free trial or something. Just give it a little test drive just for an evening and just kind of figure out, do you like the look and feel? Because if I can give you one piece of advice after trying all of them, mostly, they're all pretty much the same thing. Like a project manager is a project manager, a communication app's a communication app, email's email. Like they all do the same thing. But again, it's like the hardware store and the hammer. It's how you do it. And so you may find that Milanote's amazing because it's like an endless whiteboard. And you may like Notion because it's a little bit more structured. Both can manage projects. Both can be great. Which one do you enjoy working with more? Because if you're going to be using these tools every day, think about them as almost mini teammates, whether they're AI or not. You're interacting with these products and these things for many hours usually, whether it's, selling stuff on Shopify or playing on Squarespace or doing something on Framer. You have all of these options and they all get you to the same result. And again, going back to the previous video, simplicity. So there are the ones that are like, you can do anything with this and here's all these things. Don't do all of those things. Like just because you have that list of what you're going to do, what your North Star is, and to try and keep it simple, do just that with the software. So they may have all these templates where they're like, try this, try that, stand-up meeting, that. What if you don't need a stand-up meeting? So like, don't go after all those. Just play around and see what you like and what you don't like. And I think that's a good place to start. But the other thing that I'll recommend is to write down what your processes are right now. And I mean like piece of paper, write it down. Write down the things that you're focused on, the processes that you have as best as you can, because that'll at least give you a running list to start with. And that'll give you a running list of the things that you need to, kind of build a foundation around. But at the same time, you may also find that some of the tasks you're kind of going, well, why do I do that if I do that? Now you can take 10 steps and make them 5. So that's all part of the process of thinking through with a systematic mindset. So, I mean, if you have any questions on systems mindset, you can definitely put them down below, and I'll be able to answer them. I really think that we're going through a time where we can completely shift how we do things as well. And so I don't necessarily want this to be a conversation or a channel or a video or a series even on, which softwares to use or anything like that, because fundamentally they're all changing. This is about the mindset around it, the problem solving and the thinking. So going back to that age of discernment that we're going into, how do you train that intuition, that discernment to know what's valuable and what's not, when all of these tools can give you justifiable reasons why to use them? Discernment's going to be huge. And I don't think people have trained that enough. Like, I think we have gotten very comfortable with accepting the information that we see on the screen or the way of doing things. And I think we're getting to a point in society where we can kind of break that mold a little bit. You can get really creative on building whatever you want. You can kind of search out your own type of information through experience. And when we're able to do that, we're training that discernment. Because there's plenty of situations that I found myself in where I was like, this is going to be really awesome. And then I'm right in the middle of, why did I do that? And why am I here? And, I should change this. That's part of training that discernment. And so there are many mistakes to be made. And in fact, mistakes are weirdly great. They're not fun. They're not always the best, but they are so worth it. And I think it'll aid in that discernment. So train the discernment, make a list, build your foundations, and we'll chat next time.
Look, my line, I get ready. Feeling too trippy, get it cracking like a levy. I'ma show 'em all how to party if they let me. Keep the countdown and relax.